to be the hands, heart and voice through our actions and to care and support our communities. We have some great organisations in Tasmania, one being Speak Up, Stay Chatty. And this Friday is Wear Shorts Day, being the 20th of June Friday. So donate a little if you can, but more importantly, care about each other. Today I also attended Sacred Heart School Grandparents' Day to show support and care for two little girls whose grandparents were unwell and could not attend. This was a great day for grade 1. A very confident young student reminded me today in their acknowledgement of country about how words can be powerful. Hello Earth, hello sky, hello friends, hello I. We thank the traditional custodians, the Malakadee people of the Yuin River and the Lilliconi people of the far south, for now and before, who care for the land from the mountains to the shore. Together we will discover and grow and care for each other and country for wherever we go. Tonight we have in attendance Councillor Deputy Mayor Thorpe, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Jessup, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Gibson, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Burgess and Councillor Rozak. And would you like to introduce your staff?
Thanks. Tonight we have General Counsel Matthew Ramsey, Director of Community and Place Lyle Ground, Director of Infrastructure and Assets Frank Chen, Director of People and Corporate Patty Johnson. And we've got our support staff Olga Barth, the Executive Assistant, and Connor Watson, Innovation and Technology Project Officer.
Thank you. We have no apologies tonight. There's no leave of absence tonight. There's no absent. Councillors, do anyone wish to declare an interest in any of tonight's agenda items?
Yes, Mayor. And agenda item 19.034-25 and agenda item 19.035.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. 4.006/25, the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the minutes of the ordinary meeting 21st of May and the special meeting 4th of June as circulated be confirmed? Councillor Rozak and Councillor Gibson. Do any councillors wish to make any changes?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, if that's the case, or put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Just keep them up for a moment, please. Yep, that's all councillors and the motion is carried. Do we have any legislative items? Urgent matters? Mayor's announcements. Well, I had my little bit about Grandparents' Day, which was brilliant today, and I was reminded how precious our little ones are. And just to reiterate that we do need to care for each other in the community, and that's come about through a few things that have happened in the last week or so. Public participation 8.1.1. There was no questions taken on notice from the previous meeting. You're all right.
Haven't coughed all day.
8.1.2, there were 2 questions given on notice from Fern Vella regarding Grove intersection design and fencing on private property. Responses are available on the website and have been included in the minutes. Page 1.3, questions without notice. There were several questions emailed in for tonight's meeting. Jenny Camber-Smith regarding the Halls review. Dr. Liz Smith regarding the Halls review and questions without notice process. Joshua Graham Evans regarding council's wages, expense and performance reporting metrics in annual reports. Chris Wilson for Circular Economy Yuin regarding the Halls review and Flood Road bypass cycle pedestrian paths. Caleb Elcock regarding consulting costing for the LPS process. Jeffrey Swan regarding the 2025-26 budget and childcare centre profit and loss. Responses are available on the website and will be included in the minutes.
Sorry.
So public question time. Welcome to public question time. If you have a question as the chair, I'll ask that you come forward to the lectern and identify yourself by name and area where you live. To make things fair and equitable, we have a limit of 2 questions per person, and we normally allocate 15 minutes, but that will be, everyone will get a chance. All questions must be directed to me as chairperson, and I will either answer or refer to the General Manager, CEO. Every attempt will be made to provide an answer, otherwise it'll have to be taken on question. On those, debate on questions cannot be entered into when council hasn't made decisions on them if it's in the paper. So, is there anyone that'd like to come forward and ask a question? I'll go from the back forward, so if you'd like to come forward to the back too. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors and Mayor. My name is Jessica Jordan-Hoverman. I come from Port Huon, and I'm here to raise a question about the Halls management response. I will start by first saying I thank the councillors for your time. I also thank a number of councillors for specifically being willing to sit and talk with me outside of this formal environment about a range of concerns that I have myself and that have been relayed to me by people that are involved either in the halls or who use them. I will also thank, forgive me, I don't know if it should be Lachlan or Lockie. I've written to everybody. I think you've had my email, and I appreciate, Lockie, the time that you have taken to respond not once but twice to the concerns I've raised. I think that's admirable and has answered a number of my queries. You will all know that the particular questions that I have are specifically around some of the issues that I think have been insufficiently fleshed out within the documentation that is available for the public. I recognise that there are risks to council, but there remains disquiet and uncertainty within a number of community members that I have spoken to around a range of the aspects. This is a significant change in process and that has been in place for a long time. My question then is specific. Is there a reason this decision is being made tonight? It is fairly quickly after documentation has been released, and there are still major concerns. I have asked in my email, and I specifically ask here tonight, can you tell me the reason why this decision cannot be delayed another couple months until the ongoing discussions that you are having with all committees around how finances will be used, how caretakers will be selected, how community can continue to be involved, can be resolved, and then come to council? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to answer that. So thank you for the question, and thanks for the questions we've gone backwards and forwards on previously. So there has been a considerable amount of consideration leading up to this decision. I feel that there's been a sufficient consideration, and we now want to. We have significant risks that we need to remove as quickly as we possibly can from council because we have significant liability attached to those. We want to move past that, and we want to, with the resources we've got available to us, focus on working with the community on the activation and the preservation of that engagement around the halls, as opposed to continuing in a process that would very likely continue to challenge the idea of we still want volunteer arrangements in place. And we'll spend a significant amount of that engagement time focused on that question, which my strong recommendation to councillors is that we do not need to persist with that formal volunteer structure. So hence my recommendation to them is that we've got sufficient information and we need to keep moving forward.
This is something we haven't.
No, it's just on the same subject.
Yeah, but we haven't made it. We haven't come.
It's just a question, just through to General Manager, that it's also around the AGMs for the community halls and the process for them going forward.
Mhm.
You know, we have to.
Provides a neat endpoint.
That's right.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah. So, and look, there may be more discussion at the appropriate time before us tonight. Yep.
Okay. Yes, Jerry.
Thank you. Jerry White, Craddock. I sent out information about my question this afternoon, which I hope you've received, and it's to do with halls and the future of the halls and volunteering within the municipality. And I think it's about walking the talk within the council. Our council website proudly reports that Huon Valley Council recognises that volunteering is a key part of the ongoing health and strength of Huon Valley communities, with many of the valley's community halls, festivals, events and clubs only existing due to the dedication of volunteers. And there's another statement that says that each of council's community halls has a dedicated committee that ensures that the halls are maintained and loved for many to enjoy for years to come. Despite these statements, this evening there is a motion to abolish hall management committees, which has disenfranchised and deeply upset many past and present hall committee members. The council also has on its website a 25-page hall management committee handbook with instructions on operational issues, roles of the committee, liaison with council, finance, and advice about risk avoidance. But this document isn't given to hall committee members, or it isn't on a regular basis. Another document on the website is a volunteer policy, and this was approved in 2016 with no record of being updated, and again, not consistently given out to hall committee members, and there is scant mention of the obligations that council has to volunteers within that document. My question is, first, please can council establish working groups comprised of council officers and representatives from hall management committee members to rewrite and update an operational guide to running halls and contribute to the upgrading of the volunteer policy, thereby demonstrating it is sincere about the support for the continuing operation of halls and the valuable role of community volunteers. And the second question is, can the motion to abolish the halls to be held over until the redrafted operational guide for running the halls and the updated volunteer policy is rewritten so that these two documents can be approved by council at the same meeting, but prior to moving that the hall management committees be abolished? And I'm saying that this is the approach that would be good for the community because he's reaffirming faith and commitment to the dedicated hall volunteers and allied place-based progress associations. It demonstrates intent to maintain and further develop the network of halls. And lastly, it's establishing a consultative method to improve policies and procedures for hall operation and volunteering now and in the future that would not be achievable without working with hall volunteers.
Thank you very much for your questions. I can state that the statement about volunteers is about volunteers, Jerry. Our volunteer of the year, like, you don't have to be. It's not always someone that's on a committee of council. Volunteering, I hold close to my heart as volunteering. Yes, so I don't associate, but I can pass over the CEO for the rest of the statement.
Well, just to look on your first question, not echo that. There's an important distinction between volunteering generally and volunteering as a special committee of council.
Yes.
And we appreciate volunteers across the board, and we certainly appreciate the efforts that volunteer committees, hall committees, have provided over many, many years, which leads on to the next part around the handbook and policies as is in the paper, and as I've spoken to all the hall committees that I've been around and sat down with, these the gaps that you're speaking of are the demonstrable evidence of council putting halls in a position of effectively set and forget. That is on council. There has been inadequate oversight of hall management committees. That's our responsibility. That said, if we did all what you're suggesting, our considered view, and there's been a lot of effort put into this by a lot of human resources experts, et cetera, we could go through that process and still come to the conclusion that to manage, to persist with volunteers as special committees of council, there's not the requirement for it when you consider that bookings and maintenance needs to come across to council itself. And then when you're left with events, you don't need to be a special committee. And we're not able to substantially modify and reduce the risk that we have, knowing how volunteers want to act differently to staff. They don't want the overhead that's attached to that. So there's some important distinctions, I suppose, but I just want to underscore that comment that the council is responsible for that oversight, and it's a lapse, and we're not shy of that. That is part of the problem. That's why I initiated the review. Your second question, really, I can only take as a comment that we can consider here tonight. We've heard that, and knowing as well that there is an amended motion that will be tabled straight away for consideration, I believe that will substantially address your concerns and questions, because it's absolutely the intent of everyone in this room to maintain engagement of the community, but do that without having special committees of council.
Yes. One of my concerns, and it's not stated there, is the cost to council and looking at the diversity of roles that volunteers have performed within the committees system, and whether that can be moved to another structure outside of the committee so that safeguards any risk to council being sued.
These are the kind of issues that we've in early days of exploring, but we'll continue to explore with each of those committees, and certainly the diversity that we see and the focus we see on those different hall committees is very, very different, which is why it needs an individualised touch. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Do I have any other questions? Yes, come forward.
Good evening. My name's Chris Wilson from Abels Bay, and I'm also going to talk about this. Well, two questions, but the first one's about the same issue. Far more eloquent and used to public speaking than me have expressed the concerns. I guess my concern really is what risk management process has been undertaken before this decision, and that's including looking at the risks of this thing, because there will be a lot of volunteers lost, a lot of angst already in the community, and versus the benefits of either system. And I completely hear what you're saying about the concerns with the financial and litigation issues that you're perceived to be vulnerable. I've worked as a nurse for 40 years and very closely with the medical profession, and when lawyers get in their ears, things go awry. So it really seems to me partly the CYA syndrome that we're dealing with here as well. And I don't really understand the issues that have happened. I've come late into this, but that cover your ass thing is a real thing in Australia, and it's to our detriment. I think from what I've seen, these halls committees have got fantastic volunteers that are very proud of their organisation, and I think there are probably structures and processes that could be looked at. For example, Kentish Council has a whole thing about, and I was directed to them by Volunteering Tasmania. Can I have a glass of water? Sorry, I'm not used to this.
I feel your pain.
Not my fault, eh? Thank you, Lucas. So, and there seems to be, and as I said, I'm relatively uninformed about this process. I'm new to it. So, but there seems to be an unholy rush going on at the moment. And all that we're asking for is let's stand back. There's no need for a knee jerk unless there's something going on that we're not aware of, and that's a possibility. So let's stand back, do a proper risk assessment, risk management process of, going forward with it or not going with it, involve the community, involve the halls, and then see where we are. That may have already happened. I don't have a lot to do with council, and it's enough to go in my simple life to keep me busy 24 hours a day, really. So, and
Is that part of the question?
yes,
I'm happy to, through you, Mayor. So, look, a risk assessment has been part and parcel of this, and the time that council has taken on this has been to try to preserve that sense of place and volunteering within the halls, whilst also removing risk. So we have conducted a risk assessment. The reason for not delaying and working further is knowing that we have there isn't the opportunity to sufficiently and at a reasonable cost remove those risks if we continue with volunteers. If I had, and I've said this to a number of the hall committees as we've met them individually, if in going into the review, and we commenced this review in good faith, council having not reviewed the hall management processes for a very long time, and in acknowledgement of the type of issues that Jerry White's brought up tonight, that there's gaps everywhere. I came in, new CEO, not very comfortable that this is being done in the best possible way and to the best, to maximise inclusivity for the community. So we then commenced, and we then quite quickly identified some pretty extreme risks, most of which are included in the report.
As well as a matrix for our risk assessment.
Yeah, so you can
It's
see
in
that
the
matrix
attachment.
in there.
In the paper.
So we identified those. If I had have known at the start what we found, the alternative approach would have been to go to the community and workshop that with them. So take that risk assessment and say, here's the risk we perceive. How can we together, as volunteers and council, work through those risks and moderate those? That would have given the community much better context. It would have been a much better way to engage, and we would have got to a position much earlier. But I am positive that it would not have changed the outcome.
so it seems to me that the same amount of work is still going to have to be done, whether it's by council-paid employees or volunteers. And given what happens in so much other of Tasmania, Tas Fire, Tas Ambulance, driver mentoring, Landcare, Coast Care that I work in, there's risks associated with all those people, and probably more than the average. I accept that there will be old farts up on roofs every now and then, but that's going to be not a common thing. So I'd say that the risk, you're still going to be faced with the risks and the costs for those, because of a person conducting a business undertaking, we know those risks. I don't believe they've changed since I brought in 2012. So especially with regard to your liability. So yeah, I'm just urging that.
Well, thank you. We have heard you on that, and we haven't made
Okay.
It's in our papers to talk about that.
I won't take any more of your time. The second one was about, if I can still ask a second question,
Yes, you may.
is about the new flood road that I've driven along, because I volunteer at the Huon Nursery most weeks. So it wasn't until about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I drove along, and all the speed signs had gone, and all the road clutter, the signs, and there was the footpath coming from Sale Street and just ending abruptly before a telegraph pole. And then somebody told me, so I just thought, gee, $30+ million, and I'm sure that there would be a standard in road making that includes separation of pedestrian and cycle traffic away from the road. And then there's quite a drop down. Once you get off that footpath, which that ends abruptly, there's quite a drop. And in fact, I looked as I'm driving past for upturned people on scooters or something. But anyway, I joke. But the other thing is that there's a bus stop, and that was pointed out to me that I hadn't noticed before, and that's separated from all, that's on a footpath that goes to that little street heading west. So my question is, I understand it's the State Roads Department, not yours, but you would have had some input into that situation, and you certainly have input into that now. So are you able to look at that and get that remedied? That's my question.
Well, I can
We've
read
got-
you the response, I think, that we gave that's on our, back to your question, because that was one of the questions you were asked on notice. So,
Sorry.
no, that's okay.
So, yeah.
So I can, would you like us to read that, or would you like me just to
No,
give you?
that was my question, just that you,
Yeah, we have answered, so,
It'll be published in the minutes, so that you haven't asked anything further, that's not.
that's not in your question. But if you'd like to have a read now, I can, but you can take that.
Read it.
That's all right.
Thank you for your time.
No
And
worries,
patience.
no problems. Yes, I had at the front. Yeah,
I've got to kill your conscience.
I know, but why did you think it was you?
Noel Drove from Franklin.
no.
And I'd like to ask about the camping ground at Franklin. Now, the history of that quickly is that it was operated by the Palais Management Committee and another operator with close cooperation with the council at that time. And another operator who wanted all the business for himself complained to the business regulator that it was unfair competition, which was upheld. And the council had to separate themselves from the camping ground and pass control to the Palais Management Committee. Now, since the Palais Management Committee has been dissolved, council is now operating that camping ground, even employing security agents to collect the money every night, which was done by volunteers before. I want to know whether council are operating that camping ground legally, because it is contrary to the ruling of the business regulator, and also whether the camping ground will be passed back to the Palais Management Committee when we're reinstated.
Okay, I'll pass that through to, you want to,
Comment on one or
that one, or do you want to take it?
Probably best to take that on notice to provide back.
Sure. Yep. We can take your first question on notice and provide a written summation so that we're legally tight. Your second question relating to is it getting handed back to the Palais Management Committee? The Palais Management Committee won't be being reinstated. It's one of the hall committees that we're talking about. So no, there won't be an ongoing involvement of that committee in managing the Franklin campground.
We're not going to be reinstated.
Pending council's decision.
Tonight.
Thank you.
Let me see if I've got any others first. Yes, May? What's the time?
How you going? So I'm Rachel O'Toole from Franklin, and I did send round an email to quite a few councillors. Thank you, Amy, for getting back to me. I appreciated the phone call. A bit disappointed I didn't hear back from the others. But anyway, I'm here to ask two questions. So I just want to know, will you meet with each hall? You said you're going to meet with each hall. Does that include the Palais Management Committee that you will be meeting with them?
No.
No? Okay.
We will be meeting with the Franklin Progress Association as the community that are interested in that hall.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And also just one more thing. So from the Palais Management Committee, a lot of the websites and details need to be updated. So I'm still getting phone calls from people for bookings or so forth. So there's a lot of material that needs to be updated.
Sure. Yep.
And that's it.
Aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you got one question?
Just one.
Just one. Yep.
Yep. Thank you for your indulgence. This is my second question.
Yeah, it's okay.
I guess it puzzles me that having read the documentation that is before you for discussion this evening, which acknowledges that if you had known differently, you would have engaged differently and in a greater format, more completely. And having said that here tonight, I still don't understand and would like to understand why the opportunity to do that now is not being taken. The reason I say that is because there's a long history which has an unfortunate past of distrust between community and council. And I think there is an opportunity to do exactly what you have said, to explain to community, not to the whole management groups, but to community, the risks you are trying to manage, why you are trying to manage them in the way that you are, and the outcomes that you perceive, some of which you've given me an email and some of which are still to be resolved. I think you have a possibility of bringing community on board if you take slightly more time to have that conversation, as opposed to making a decision tonight, recognizing the disquiet, distrust and distress that is out there now. So yes, I recognize there are risks. I don't know that the risks you have tonight are any worse than the risks you had 6 months ago. So I'm not sure why a 2-month delay is that much of a problem.
We'll take that, yeah. Well, we've still, as we say,
Yep.
it's still to come before us.
Yep.
So we'll take that. Thanks for that, Jessica. Okay, we've gone past our allotted time, so I'll now move on to 8.2. Is there any deputations tonight? Report number 9.003/25. Petition regarding North Ewan and Lonavale roads. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Gibson and seconder, Councillor Burgess, I think. So that was, did you get that? Oh,
Gibson and Burgess?
yes. Yes, Councillor Gibson, would you like to? Oh.
I think there's been a fairly good response in this. I guess I had, I think it's actually a very professional response. I had a question. What are the main causes of extra wear and tear in this particular road?
That's through to you, Frank, if you'd like.
Through the mayor? Well, I would say it's the time for the extra wear and tear. We don't have extra wear and tear. It's over time, a road will deteriorate over a period of time. And we acknowledge that we didn't go back quick enough this time to understand, to do the regrading. But also this gives us the opportunity to understand 5 months probably stretched too far. So, and council committed to regrading a year for Lonavale Road. Now we know generally we do 3 months. Now we know we cannot do 5 months. So we just have to pick a number between 3 to 5. And in terms of deterioration of a gravel road, there's many reasons caused to that, including probably most important, weather. Either too dry or too wet would accelerate the deterioration of the road. We know there's a large usage of heavy vehicles along that road that would also add extra pressure and deterioration to the road. And other reasons such as the quality of the work, which that's a focus of council staff at the moment, is to improve the quality of the work, make sure every penny from the community gets spent on the road worth the money, and also the material. Sourcing from the quarry also depends on which quarry you get the material from. There's probably a slight variation, even from the same quarry, could cost different.
No problem. Yes, Councillor Jessup?
So, Mayor, it looks like in the table at point 43 that we're talking about 17 kilometres is the length of the road in question. Just out of interest, what would be the cost roughly to bituminise or seal a road like that? What's the average sort of cost per kilometre?
Yeah, it can
really
vary a lot.
I wouldn't come with a number just to make it up, because it really depends on the number of traffic, the road weights, and because the road is not just put a bitumen down. We're talking about have to reconstruct pavement, probably dig 300, 400, even 700 mil down and remove the material. So until we've done the geotech investigation and or proper pavement design, we won't be able to determine what's the payment depth. That's directly impacts on the construction cost.
No spoilers is what he's saying. We'll release the info in December.
Oh, you are going to look at it for.
Oh, we're well advanced in doing that, in doing the geotech. There's a number of roads that we're looking at that have reasonably high utilisation, and looking at the cost benefit of doing it. So, yeah, we'll release it at the time, but they do vary significantly.
So it's been actively looked at the moment, and
Yeah.
we'll get back in December. Okay.
Any further? No? Councillor Gibson, do you?
I think, yeah, it's
All right, then I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Petitions. CEO, are there any petitions to be tabled?
There is. So tonight I'm tabling a petition lodged with council on 13th of June 2025 as follows. The petition requests council to provide rental housing to encourage a GP to reside and work in this area. The petition is stated to contain 429 signatories and complies with the requirements of section 57(2) of the Local Government Act 1993 as a paper petition. So the recommendation specifically is that the petition requesting council to provide rental housing to encourage a GP to reside and work in this area, lodged with council 13 June 2025, be received.
Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Burgess, and a seconder, Councillor Thorpe. And then I'll vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. Thank you. 10, there's no reports from planning. General reports. Are there any councillors tonight tabling their activities? Would anyone like to speak to their activities? Yes,
And
Councillor
look, I'm going to treat this as an activity that's happened in June, but a number of us went to the opening Hue and Show launch on Sunday afternoon. We had to bat away the half a dozen politicians who were there shaking hands and kissing babies. But look, it was just great to see that being an active volunteer community association that's next year will be celebrating its 80th year, which is a great milestone. And just to remind everybody that the show is on the 15th of November.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other councillors that'd like to? Yes, Councillor.
just to mention, attending the initial halls meeting down in Huonville, and then I made an effort on the back of fairly obvious level of upsetness to go to as many hall meetings as I could manage.
Very much appreciated by all. So thank you very much for that, Councillor Gibson. Any other? No? Okay. So 11.006/25. Do I have a councillor to move a motion that the general reports and minutes for the period 1 to 31 May 2025 be received and noted? Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Armstrong. Do you wish to speak to anything in the reports? Do you wish to open, Councillor Thorpe?
I have some questions after this.
Okay. Oh, we can.
A comment would be just congratulating again the recipients of the Huon Valley Community Awards. I think I unfortunately wasn't there on the day, but the names that come across from regular. In the reports, there's mention of the, reconnecting with the Friends of Garden Island Creek in regards to the beach roads. Just wanted to see what that reconnection was and where that is at.
So we've been engaging with Garden Island Beach community around the beach erosion that they've been facing. The sort of nuances of how the beach and the sort of the ocean in that space is impacting that beach alongside climate change and sea level rise and increased storms. So we're looking to work with the community. They've raised their concerns around that erosion, the rate of that erosion. So we're working with them around what sort of solutions look like in that space, and also how do we plan for what the future looks like for that community. So,
And I did have one other question. I've got to find the notes.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Mayor, I hope I'm in the right place in the agenda. The strategic planning report, am I in the right place? I think so. Just noting a number of important studies that the council staff are doing, particularly that are coming up for consultation soonish. Obviously, the Huonville Residential Master Plan Precinct study. We did a workshop on that, and that was really quite exciting, and I thought that looked really positive. And the rural living one that will come up down the track when that comes out. So just for those interested in planning, I think they're really important things. A couple of questions I had on the way through that staff have answered, but I'll just very quickly, for the record, note. Good work on getting the childcare worker retention money, which was clearly a cock up by the federal government which almost cut out local government from it.
We haven't got it yet. We have a pathway to getting it.
Good luck for finding a pathway and getting the public servants on board, and also the commitment to back pay our staff when we get there. Mayor, the EV charges has been coming up a bit where we get criticised a lot for not having enough EV charges. And I do wonder if it's a role of council to be putting in a lot of EV charges. State Growth, I believe, is the government body responsible for rolling out the EV network across Tasmania, and I work at one of their technology sites in Tasmania, and it's not an EV charger to be seen for Cooey there. So I'm just wondering, Mayor, it's great for us to identify smart charging grants and all that sort of stuff, but are we intending to get into the market of putting in EV chargers, or are we going to try to activate the business or social community to actually put these in themselves? Because I absolutely agree that we need some, but I'm sick and tired of people saying, your EV charger's not working, and because we put them out the back of some car park somewhere where they get vandalised, rather than putting them, Main Street in the middle of a service station or somewhere where I think they probably should be.
Yep. So we took the, sorry, through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
We,
There is a bit in the papers, but yeah.
there is, we took the early lead, I suppose. We've had EV chargers in place in Cygnet, Huonville and Geeveston for several years now. And I think that's an appropriate level to provide that early infrastructure. But better locations for them are on commercial premises that are on Main Street locations, etc. And there is increasing business awareness that this is a feature, a necessary feature for your business moving forward. So I expect that they'll start popping up on commercial premises more than relying on ours.
So you're sort of not saying that we're intending to compete with those natural things and put more in? Yeah, okay.
No.
Good. I just wanted to check that.
No plan to unless I'm directed to.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Jessup.
I have a few questions. I hadn't heard of weeping sedge. That's in the NRM report. I was wondering what's the process that through you, Matt, by which it spreads? Is it a mechanical or wind-blown?
Cool. So through you, Mayor, the weeping sedge was an interesting one. It was a historical record that there was only one of it that on the Natural Values Atlas, and we decided to sort of go and understand if it was still there and what its extent was. We actually discovered a number of populations in the area, so it is spreading. The mechanism of spreading is still being explored. So whether that's actual rootstock that's been ripped up through, because it's usually on roadside verges. So whether through operations and just vehicle movement, it's been sort of carried via just vegetative material, or if it's actually seed that's actually then dispersing. So I can't give you a definitive answer. Busy looking at that.
But it's mostly on SCT land or associated with
Yeah, for the most part, but there are some other populations that we're discovering. We're still sort of surveying the full extent of it, and also what the potential impact of that particular species is on our ecosystem.
In strategic planning, as Councillor Jessup mentioned, the Huon Structural Plan, I think would be very good for everybody to have a look at. It's quite interesting. And I was wondering whether or not councils will have a look at the final draft before it goes out, because there were a number of questions and things on the back of the workshop.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Under emergency, the personal centred emergency preparedness, I was sort of interested in that and wondered if somebody could elaborate, and wondered whether the framework identifies who are the people who would help those who are going to have difficulty in emergency. I don't know quite how that structure works, and whether it's expandable to other members of the community.
Probably need to provide some more information separately, right?
Yeah.
To go,
Yeah.
to dig in deeper,
Yeah.
you're beyond us here tonight, so we'll get you some more information on the functions there.
On emergency, it was good to have Heather McCabe there at all of those hall meetings, because the halls do provide a good centre for resilience and emergency. In community engagement, I just wanted to give credit to the staff, especially Lisa Paul, for the results in the Huon Valley Community View Survey with the 8% response, which I thought was excellent. And the point of interest, I think, for the community is how high the Huon ranked in relation to Australia in the value we put on community. So I think that was really good to hear, and good to make sure that council continues to focus on community as a priority. There was no question with that. The Huonville pool, there was the bit of an assessment of bookings and and the finances there, but I guess the element that wasn't in there was the asset renewal and allowance, and I'd be interested in sort of knowing the real annual costs with those sorts of things built in. That's all I had out of the reports.
Yeah. I think that we will be workshopping all our all things that council
All
has
assets, yeah.
in different areas. Yeah. Do I have any other? Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Mayor. I'm not entirely sure whether I'm in the right section either, but just had a couple of questions about resealing of roads. Which would be just the appropriate time.
As in, tell me what you mean.
Well, first of all, I just want to say in the behavioural policy on page 186, there's a spelling error, which we can get to later. Did you pick that up too? Oh. So I noticed that there is a reseal of an unnamed road off Slab Road, which was $20,900 in one of the things. Where is that road? If it's unnamed, where is it?
Yes, through your mayor, that's the road going to the sports ground in Sigmund.
Ah, is that what it is? Okay. Why is that unnamed?
So that's a driveway.
Armstrong Drive, I can hear it coming.
Oh, it's got a reason.
Not a
We could do
it's
it.
not a, not a public
Okay.
Public road,
road.
but it's
It's unnamed.
unnamed.
That's a very bizarre scenario, isn't it? I sort of thought, why is there an unnamed road costing $20,900 to reseal? Thank you very much. That was that. So Mosquito Point kayak platform.
Yes.
We haven't done anything with that yet, have we?
Yeah.
Are we going to?
Through your mayor, this financial year, we installed the handrail.
Yeah,
to make-
$5,000.
to make
Yep.
it comply.
Yep.
So there's $100,000 from the state election commitment. So we have met with the friends of Mosquito Point and described the scopes and the plan going forward. So we're sourcing the design. And that's planned for the 25-26 financial year, the capital works.
So would that mean, so do all the other which brings me to my thought process with all the other kayak platforms. Do they have handrails also?
Good question.
Do
We
they
have taken
apply?
on notice. The reason we had that platform handrail installed because that was a staircase newly installed, and at that time the handrail requirements already kicked in, so that was kind of oversight, not having handrail at that particular location. But for other kayak platform, if they install before the standards kicks in, and there's no requirement to restrict
Pre-existing. Yeah. Okay, because I was just
Can I just make a clarification as well? It's not a $100,000 kayak platform that we're putting in. It's improving access and public amenity at Mosquito Point, which will also facilitate better access to
good
kayak.
because I thought that's a lot of money for, and I'm thinking, why are we doing that to another jetty and platform? Okay, that's
The platform itself is good. It's making access to that platform so people can actually utilise that asset
Yep,
better.
good. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
In line with everything, we want people to get to the great things that we have out there.
Excellent. So there was just those two. I just need to ask a question. Also, I noticed that we are now questioning the rumour that there isn't going to be a bypass road in Mary Street anytime soon.
No.
Excellent. Because I can tell you when I drove through Margate that has 2.5 times more traffic, it is an absolute nightmare. If they're not having one, then we should definitely not need one in Mary Street. I could have walked faster, and I'm an unfit person.
Sure.
No, through Margate the other
Oh,
day.
okay, right.
No, because I'm still being asked constantly, so I think people should have a little read, and
We'll have some more information to share on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
on
that-
project shortly.
that'll be good. Just off topic slightly, given that we're talking about unnamed roads being sealed, but this is not. There's a little road in Ranelagh that isn't sealed, and the rest of Ranelagh is sealed. Why is that little road not sealed?
Barney Street.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yep.
I've just driven past it a few times, just from my personal. It just seems very bizarre that we have one little street in the middle of a lovely, neat little suburb that's not sealed.
Through you, Mayor, that one is very much historic and is a private road. So it was never formed through any modern subdivision.
Right.
It was created very much historically. It used to be part of the greater Frankham property where they used to have their workers' shacks on the site there. The land was it was already cut up into titles, so it was subsequently sold off as those titles with pretty much a cheap gravel road put down. So the only council involvement is for the purpose of naming it as Bailey Street, but it is not a council maintained road.
So who maintains it then?
The owners of the properties.
Really? Isn't that interesting? It just looks completely out of place, doesn't it, really, with everything else? Oh, thank you. That was just for my benefit, really. That was nothing to do with anything, but thanks. That was all. Thank you.
Do we have any other? Yes.
I just have one last one, and it's about the Huonville Pool too. It was good to see that the revenue had surpassed what our forecast was. I'm sure we'll see the consequences, see if there was any heightened expenses or we had a reduced deficit later when we review that. But if I do my maths correct, there was 54 people using Ticket to Play or Ticket to Wellbeing access for our pools, and I'm wondering if we are actually going to take some time to review that access to how we support people that might be seeing a financial barrier to actually use our centres, beyond just those Ticket to Play or concession rates, etc. Because I think that's quite a significant representation for just 2 sports facilities in the Huon Valley.
I know Frank's team are working hard at looking at ways to incentivise people and look at a broad spectrum and do what we need to do, introduce pricing mechanisms, incentives, etc., to get people using those assets. So there'll be more considerations, etc., coming to council to support people.
And I think we need to do it. And Amy, you can probably do this when you go to Alba. We need to say the importance of Learn to Swim, and the fact that it needs to be. And I have spoken to one of the federal ministers about the fact that they need to put more money into Learn to Swim for children.
We need to get that man. What's that man's name? Laurie.
Laurie, yeah, Laurie.
Get Laurie.
Yeah.
But I mean, even
Yeah.
just like the opportunity to use ticket to play for swimming lessons, I've only just learned that. So there's
Yeah.
probably a number of parents out there that don't realise.
I
they
think
can do
that schools and that did advertise.
Children.
Yep, could possibly be. Is that yep, yes, councillor, just.
Well, just a quick one. Reading the new technical officer commenced. Somebody asked me if the wording implied that we're replacing the plumbing surveyor role. And I just did follow up with the director that we still have our plumbing surveyor or a plumbing surveyor, so we will still be able to sign off plumbing projects. But the technical officer is it more an advisory? What's the technical officer's role in that section?
Through the director. So the plumbing surveyor themselves undertakes the inspections and obviously is looking at compliance with the various codes and the act itself. The technical officer is helping with the actual technical permits, so creating the permits and doing all the legwork around that surrounds that process. So when we did a review of the unit, we looked at where those pressure points and those sort of bottlenecks were, and we found that was where we needed to resource. So hence why we restructured for that.
Okay, I just have one statement. It comes out of the waste area. Was that I don't know how many's been up or how many's used the container to deposit machines. On Sunday when I was up there, yeah, well done, well done. I asked the two people that were in front of me, and there was some young boys with they was up to $50, and they were still going with Coke cans. Now, I asked them what they would have done with those, and they just would have went in the rubbish bin. So we are a lot of good people, recycle, I know, but I also know that a lot of the people were putting it just in their general rubbish. So it's marvellous, it's working well, and I know that there is children that have put milk crates on their push bikes that have been cleaning up, telling me you don't know what we've just found under the bridge, but they have been picking up the bottles and cans and taking it up there and swapping the Woolies vouchers with their mum for cash back from the Woolies voucher. So I just want to make point that it is working, and I'm sure we will end up with some stats back to say how good it is working with the amount that we're taking away from our transfer stations.
Putting things into. It's good to see, whether it's for money or whether it's for cleaning or whether it's it doesn't really matter because it's hitting all the pluses.
So it's working really well. So, and I just want to make note that if you have driven up Wilmot Road lately, you will notice how good the footpath looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to, through the director, please pass on our thanks and congratulations. I know the high school are very appreciative. The fence is up, most of the work's complete. It's looking quite smick, so well done to the company that done that.
Yeah, it's not
Well
bad.
done, no, well done, it is, so well done to them. Yeah, so do we have any others? Councillor Thorpe, back to you. Do you have a close?
No, thanks.
All right, well, I'll put that forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Is that warm? Is it just me? Am I just... not feeling 100%. Is it? Okay. Okay. 12 is councillor workshops. We've had 3.
We have had 3. I'll
Yeah.
leave them as read.
Yeah. So, councillor questions. 13.1 answers to questions taken on notice. There was one question taken on notice from May Council meeting from Councillor Robinson. and council is working on that response. It will be included in the July council meeting agenda papers. There was 2 questions taken on notice from main meeting from Councillor Gibson, and the responses will be included in these minutes. There was no councillor questions given on notice. Councillors, are there any questions without notice for tonight? Yes, Councillor Jessup?
Mayor, I'm not sure if Paul actually asked this last time. The bike, the grant for the trail bike project.
Dover Mount.
Do we know where that is? Is it started or what's happening with that? Who's doing it?
Yeah, we need to finalise the consultant brief for that work,
Right.
and get it out the door. So our timeline is to have that result in time for us to be preparing our next budget process, basically. So we've got some time. We need to get it out the door, and that the brief that we're preparing, the intended result is to get some get guidance on how to actually build. So something we can take to market to request quotes to actually build a mountain bike park if it is going to stack up.
So does the brief involve sort of looking for a location as well as, or have we got a chunk of?
That's already been defined. There's already been work done. So it's the next stage to actually bring it into actually deliver a concept that you could go towards getting a quote for, and also talk to interested members of the community around what their involvement might be in working on tracks, that kind of stuff.
Because certainly after the not triathlon, but the ultra crazy marathon thing that was run, a lot of feedback from people about wanting to see things like that and incorporate them down here for those ultra activities. It was very well regarded, and so thank you. Interest in that.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions tonight? Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Through you. It's a bit of a random question. It's more of a statement probably, and perhaps a question, but I'm not sure how I would come across with it. So I'm just going to say it, then those that need to listen can work it out. So I notice on the planning, what would you call that, register, the documentation, there's another 5, I think, Airbnbs or short-term accommodation permits granted. Really concerned about the amount of people that are wanting to use their properties other than just for living, not concerned in the way that I think I shouldn't be having a say about how they use their property, but I'm really concerned about the rental crisis, and it's getting worse. I know that there is no governing law for council per se to regulate, but is there a way that we can make this more stringent? I'm also concerned about the people that are running these businesses commercially that have ABNs and are having to pay taxes, and they're more commercial costings. There's just no rental houses, and we are still having, there are so many short-term accommodations, and half of them are not running as proper businesses, and they're not paying extra rates. And is there a way that we can? I just don't feel like it's fair that commercial people have a whole different set of criteria, and yet basically the income is quite similar, but it's not regulated.
We can only regulate the ones that we know about. I mean, like the ones that are operating illegally. Like, have you got a list?
I've got a list.
Well, I mean,
not that I want to share with anybody.
Hence, this is the issue that we have.
We can prepare some advice on
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
I think too, we really do need to, I don't know how we do it, and it's probably we can't, but the rental crisis is real, and we've got a lot of houses that are just going through council getting approved as short-term. And I'm not begrudging those people for doing that either, but, if this continues,
I suppose if they're doing it, there must be the need for short-term rental, which means we are getting people are coming to the valley.
Going putting through council doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it correctly by registering a business and everything else though either. They're just simply getting a requirement to tick off boxes for council. But I mean, overall, how far does this go though? Like how much of our population do we want to have in rental properties that are not for families, that are for short? I mean, surely there has to be a stopping point or a slow it down point, or well, I know originally B&Bs came out that, you know, you would be able to rent one room in your home and you would have to be living in that home. But now the rules just seem to have gone out the window. And I'm not adverse to it, don't get me wrong, but I'm very concerned about the amount of people that cannot get a rental for families and homes. So expensive. And I just think, is there something that the government can do other than us, or we could work with them to try and make it more of a business type structure like everybody else has to? You know, I know it's like we can't prove that they're doing it and they say they're doing it, it's ticked off council, but there has to be a medium somewhere.
There's a number of things we can do. We'll give you some advice on it. And there's also the supply side. So that's why I guess the urgency of the strategic planning work we're doing to try to promote some higher densities, some better urban amenity, to provide some housing stock that's more affordable for people, because you've got to look at both ends of the market, and that's what we're doing. It's not all just to stop people doing, you know, what they want with their.
No, I don't want to stop people doing what they're doing, but there's a lot of them in our very small little region. But there's also a lot of people that don't have anywhere to live because they cannot afford.
Yep. So we can include it. We've got a workshop dedicated in July to planning issues, and I think this is probably, I'll throw the director under the bus. We can give a bit of a snapshot of what we can do.
That'd be good, because I've been rabbiting on about it for a little while now. But you're just seeing people looking for homes constantly, and there just don't seem to be any. I mean, people obviously have the choice to rent to whom they want to rent to as well, but I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. There probably isn't an answer. I'm just being vocal about it again.
I think that if there was an easy answer, it would be answered all around Australia. I see vacant houses. So, and they're not Airbnbs, they're vacant homes. So, and we're keeping people in their homes longer, which is meaning that we don't have the stock. Like, they're not going into, they're keeping aged people at home. So there's a lot of things that's created.
The other thing too is, like with Airbnbs and short-term accommodation, if they're not, you know, if they're constantly having more than the allocated amount of people that we would average per person per household that are paying normal rates, they're costing us more for their usage of our facilities, but they're not paying extra for it. So that comes back to rate revenue and reducing the rate that everybody else has to pay in the long run as well. But I mean, how do you, you know, like, lots of questions.
Yes, Councillor Robertson.
Probably a follow-on comment from that, and then I'll ask a question. I did some analysis a while ago. I think it's 6 or 8 or 10 months ago, and I can't find it right now. But I analysed. I tried to look through census at the number of these visitor accommodation dwellings by locality through the Huon Valley. And then I looked at which of those were potentially taking from what I'd consider the residential market. So for that, I looked at the main connected communities, so communities along our bus routes down to Cygnet and down to Dover, versus the number of those visitor accommodation places in less connected locations. And what I came up with from memory was that there was a really big bias towards those visitor accommodation places being in less connected places that people aren't necessarily looking for a rental in. And if I look through the table in the meeting papers, we've got Verona Sands, Garden Island Creek, Ramonia, and there was Glaciers Bay. So they're not really
Are they on bus routes?
No.
No.
No, those ones aren't. So they're almost where I'd rather people have their holiday accommodation
Near
places.
the beaches and
Yeah,
coastal.
they're down near the beach, out of the way.
School bus runs for people that need to get little ones on buses that haven't got cars, need to be on that road to be able to get there.
And that was what I was looking for. Are we losing, half of these properties in our urban accessible places and really directly competing with tight rental markets? But that's not what I came up with. If I can find the document, I'll circulate that around.
Yeah, I've seen a similar sort of document before from things as well. I just get really disturbed at the price of rentals, and it's just one of those horrible situations, really. But anyway, it's an interesting conversation all round.
The next question I'll ask, I didn't ask it against general reports and the planning reports, but we still have quite a few DA applications in the pile to be assessed or requiring further information. We've gone through the change to the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, and that in that process we expected some challenge as we shifted our, there's different set of rules in a number of ways. So we expected some challenge, and that would make our resourcing more difficult. But I would have hoped to see that pile starting to reduce by now. And it's now over 200 applications as opposed to where we were sitting in the 160s, 170s. Any particular comment on those figures?
Well, we've now been providing the breakdown for some time. So there's 140 that are sitting with action for the applicants and 71 that are sitting with us. I don't know if there's any further. That's just that 71 is the sort of the churn rate that we're sitting on. So yeah.
Just as a couple of examples, without even having to say, when you have people ring you and say, "Oh, I've had something in for a long time," when I've gone and inquired about it, it's the information has gone to the planner or whoever's put it in, but the person themselves haven't been kept up to date with where the process is and what information needs to be given. So there's quite a few where it's miscommunication. And so I've had a handful of those in the last 10 days. So it's where the people that are doing the planning for the application are completely run off their feet with applications, and they're possibly not getting the information back to the person that has it in. I don't know, but that has been the response, that the information has gone out. There's been proof that it's gone, the information has gone to whoever's putting in that paper for that person. They just haven't got their information from that person. So I'm not saying that's all of them, Amy, but there's possibly an answer to the 140 that's there. I should imagine that a lot of them.
I know we're hoping the system becomes simpler in terms of more like that clients, that residents have more foresight into what will be required, so that we don't have these outstanding information requests. So that's and that'll potentially take a little while in terms of culture change and people learning to use those tools. But yeah, it remains a concern.
Yeah. And we have some complicated areas, as we've heard today in a workshop we had before, that people can purchase land or whatever and then find that there is lots of things they have to do.
Yeah.
So anyone that says anything to me, I head them to the front counter to speak to the planner that we have at customer service to at least get some advice before they make that move, to be able to make sure that they're fully aware of what their process is going to be. The majority of the people don't mind the process, but it's getting that right advice. So I'm sure your I know he's got a happy face and he's always happy to please people. And I do. And to me, that works. That's marvellous because he makes people feel that they're important, and that's him. That's good. So.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. And what I will say though is the new Tasmanian planning scheme has a range of provisions that talk to having regard to, and then have a number of sort of factors that one has to have regard to. So, and there are certain codes, and these are things I think we've previously spoken about this. These are things where we feed back to the State Planning Office around, obviously, as you said, the objectives and the original intention of the Tasmanian planning scheme, and ultimately what it means operationally for us as a planning authority and a local government. But an example is the Parking and Access Code. It's a code that is very complex. It applies to the majority of applications. It requires very technical analysis that planners are not in that space around technical drawings and standards. These are the things that often go on to RFI because that is now something that has to be addressed. So we're working at the moment at looking at RFIs and acceptable solutions and how we can consider those in terms of both RFIing but also in conditioning space. So front of mind and something we're working on in a number of different facets, I guess.
Yes, Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, I've got a question, Mayor.
Yeah.
Following on from the whole committee review and the decision that we make tonight, are we going to look at, as a council, the other committees, council committees? For example, the Forest Workers Memorial Committee, which is a council committee. I'm on that committee, and my understanding is that if we were no longer volunteers for council, the committee would still work exactly the same. So, but has any work been done on that, or are you intending to look at other committees after whatever decision we make tonight?
Through you, Mayor. So I've had a broad look, very different profile and risk profile of those committees, doing very different things. So hence, it's not a priority that we're looking at. But there are some advantages of having a chat with those committees and seeing, and learning from the experience we've had in the hall engagement. I'd be doing things a little bit differently, and engaging with them about the. There's two memorial committees. Yeah. So, but basically, they're not a big priority because the scope of volunteering just doesn't have the same risks that we're presented with halls.
Yeah, we've got the Dover one. Is that the Dover C?
Yeah, the C memorial
one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any others? Okay. We'll move on to report number 15.023/25, General Policy Review. I'll refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Gibson, and a seconder, Councillor Jessup. Councillor Gibson.
Well, it's another set of policies reviewed, and it looks like I went through them, they were pretty thoroughly attended to. I had a question about the public open space one, which was around it's often the case that, it's better for the municipal area as a whole to take a contribution rather than land. I guess the question is whether the calculation for the financial offset is equitable for buying land. I don't quite know what the mechanism is for that, because we're trying to achieve the same amenity, I guess, for community. And I wondered whether that was entirely at council's discretion, whether we went to the financial offset, or whether it was developed.
Okay. Yep.
I can answer that one. Through you, Mayor, it is ultimately council's discretion in relation to the taking of public open space or not. A subdivider could come along and say, not providing any public open space, and council says, well, actually, there's a key strategic point here which we've identified. We want to take public open space in that. Or, as some cases have happened, developers have wanted to provide council with public open space that is very steep and really useless for their development and nicely to hand over, and council says, well, not really, that does not suit the benefits from the public. So that's the discretion that's around that. The other part is that the value is based, it is based upon 5% of the value of the land as provided in the Act, in the legislation. Council can take more than that, but where it does take more, it does need to pay for it. And the value that council takes of the property is based upon a Supreme Court case. So the improved value of the land is at the date of the sealing of the plan.
Very comprehensive answer.
Okay, yes, Councillor Robertson, sorry.
I've just been looking through the grants policy, and something that's just occurred to me is something we've discussed a few times as we've had these come to us for council review, and that is whether council is essentially endorsing a recommendation of the panel that assesses these grants, or is potentially able to overrule that. And I won't go into specifics, but we've done that a few times recently, and we've considered coming to a different conclusion, and sometimes we have come to a different conclusion than the recommendation made to us by the panel assessing that grant. That's not specifically mentioned as a concept in the policy. Should it be?
Through you, Mayor, don't believe that it should be, because this does not delegate the powers for most of those grants to any officer. Ultimately, you have an assessment committee that provides a recommendation to the council, so the ultimate decision is council's.
Yes.
So if council were to say, we want to establish an assessment panel who decides it, then that's a different thing that you'd probably be stating clearly in the policy. But ultimately, the decision is the council's, and council will have the input into the guidelines as to how they're put forward and approved.
Yes, because absolutely, if we've got if our philosophy changes on equity or distribution or
Yes, and it's a discussion that I think will be taking part. You've raised it as councillors, we've raised it as management. It's something to be discussed further as part of the budget discussions.
Okay, so that's happy not being in there. Yep.
Okay. So we have no others?
So just thank you for the ongoing work in updating all these policies. It's not finished yet, but we're getting there.
Well done. Oh, yes?
Hopefully just a quick one. With the strata and the stage development one, there's a lot, 3.3.1 or 2, is quite prescriptive about what the stages are. So normally I think in the past we've made a stage development or made substantial progress, but this is sort of, the construction, so that the development must include at a minimum a community infrastructure located on the common land, development at least one building within the same scheme, blah, blah. It's quite prescriptive. Is that a standard, or are people going to look at that and go, wow, Huon Valley is really anal? Or
Through you, Mayor, there's certainly no common standard throughout Tasmania. So at the moment, any council can pretty much do as they like and put any conditions on there. That is what a Supreme Court case that is referred to in the background of the policy says. So in the circumstance of the update of this policy, there's been reviews taken of a number of councils, particularly Glenorchy, Hobart City Council, Central Coast Council, also looking at advice on the Department of NRE website and their information regarding strata title. And we've basically modelled most of the amendments on Central Coast, which was adopted in April 2025 as the most current, and that should provide more certainty to an applicant than what we currently have, which is nothing. Certainly, as a policy comes along, if we do find that we have particular issues, then that will be the test for the policy and the grounds for a review.
Right. So just, like it's the assumption that there's going to be community infrastructure and so. I just don't know. I'm just wondering if it's going to be an inhibitor to, particularly with the stuff that we've got coming on, Signet Development and Huonville. We want people to get on with and start developing land so we can build houses to home the 5,000 homeless people in Tasmania, sort of thing. I don't know if we need to take a step back, and this is delaying the motion, but should we maybe review it in 12 months or something, just to see if there's been any kickback from people? I don't know.
Through you, Mayor, there is no difficulties with that. Certainly, in my time in council, there has been only one ever community development scheme application that was withdrawn. So it will certainly be unique if we're likely to find one in the next 12 months. And stage strata are fairly standard and common, and that what we're proposing is pretty consistent with what actually happens.
Yeah, okay.
So there's nothing new in that. The one that will be tested is the community development scheme if somebody made an application for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose we can monitor it, and if we find it's an inhibitor, then the general manager can bring it back to us and we can review it. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And you had, sorry about that, Paul, I didn't realise you're happy.
Done.
Yep, so you're happy. All right. Well, we have Councillor Armstrong out of the room, so, but all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present. Councillor? Yep, thank you. The motion is carried. Report number 15.024/25, Governance Framework Review. Further councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Please. Councillor Jessup and Councillor Rozak. Do you wish to speak to this, Councillor Jessup?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There was a lot of words on a lot of pages here, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Grimsey, for providing them to us. So I'm assuming the paper that we've got on unreasonable behaviour is a model paper that's been developed by the state. We've already got that to some extent in our unacceptable conduct behaviour. What are we actually adopting?
Through you, Mayor. So this is not managing unacceptable customer behaviour.
Yeah, we've got that already. Yep.
We have that already. What the state government has provided is dealing with disruption from the public at council meetings, which is being proposed to just incorporate straight into the governance framework.
Right.
And what this actually is, the sort of model guidelines and process associated with how you deal with unreasonable conduct with through councillors, effectively, as others in the workplace. So if you can recall, there's been a lot of ongoing discussion in relation to protection of workplaces and council behaviour, which have come particularly from other councils in Tasmania. And this is the response and guidelines for that. So it's basically, if we do get in circumstances where a councillor is, their conduct is becoming quite unreasonable and difficult for affecting staff management and so forth, and affecting other councillors, it gives us a bit of a guide to work through. It is a guide, it is guidelines, it's not perfect, but it is what can be used to manage that process, and every councillor understands it.
So I suppose that's to some extent my question with this. We've got the Local Government Act, which determines some of our conduct. We've got the Code of Conduct process. We've got our own code, which we've adopted as our Code of Conduct. Do we need to adopt this per se, rather than just having it's a guide sitting there? Because some of the stuff in it, like I'm a little bit, there's some inconsistencies in my mind with the document around the public person conducting the business type parts of it. So, and look, it's a lot of sucking eggs, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure if we should just have it and read it and go, well, here it is, as opposed to, are we giving it any form of authority by, is that what we're trying to do, so that this is a model that we're going to do, or?
For the purpose of the governance framework, and just to put in the lovely legal words, the model guidelines will be adopted as far as is reasonably practicable to implement. So it needs to be tailored to the circumstance of each particular case.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Look, I just overgoverned and underled, I think, was a report that was once written about Australia, and I think we've got just a great another layer of governance here. But it is what it is.
Through you, Mayor, the hope would be that it would never be used.
Yeah. Well, we certainly know how to respond to it if we do.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, do I have any other? No. All right, well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors present. All right, let's go.
Very good,
Take three, everybody. No, I'm just going to get my puffer and just go off the outside for you. That's okay.
That's fine.
Probably.
Turn it off, maybe.
No, it's okay. Next time I come, I'll just bring my ventilator thing and stick it there. And
So we have Finance Report May 2025, report number 16.010/25.
Sorry, everybody.
You're right. No problems. Do I have a councillor? I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Oh. Is there something, you're right.
So I'm looking for a parent, maybe? Is anybody on that?
No, I don't think I am.
Okay. Yeah. Do we wait a moment till Lachlan comes back? Yeah. We might just take a recess for a moment. Just make sure.
We just locked away.
16.010/25. I refer the council to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Jessup and Councillor Gibson. Councillor Jessup, would you like to?
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor, I just I note that we're running a greater surplus than we expected due to a number of lucky circumstances, but also getting some grants. And I think we mentioned this in the budget meeting about the success of getting the medical services grant for the rural health beds, which again is yet another way of encouraging our making medical services in the Huon more encouraging for doctors, because they like to be paid, and this is one way that we get them paid. But well done. But I note we were able to still keep our rates to a lowish level relative to maybe our neighbours. But well done for the finance team and everybody for keeping to budget.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
I just have one question about the ESG performance, noting that it's almost been a year since we made that amendment to the policy. The report indicates that it's not having a massive impact on the performance of those investments, but just wondering if there is any perceived need for a review of that, considering that that's coming up to almost a year of implementation.
ESG being the economic, social governance model. Yep.
And the investments management policy thing that we
Oh, to you, Matthew. Excuse me, to the director, to you.
That one's definitely for the director of
Come on, guys.
So, through you, Mayor. We have been keeping an eye on those, and to be honest, it has slightly impact our investment decisions. So we are actually choosing ratings and as to where we do our mix of our investments to ensure that we do comply with that policy. It hasn't materially affected our interest received. And you will notice that there is a slight different mix. We're using Bendigo Bank now with some of our investments that were coming through. So more than happy to undertake a review if that's what council would like. But it seems from an operational perspective, it seems to be working quite well. Sorry, thank you.
Yes, is that? Yes.
I'll just sit out here probably and just watch from the.
You're right. You're fine. You can up and down as whenever you like. Any other?
Sorry.
Yes, council.
I'll just note that I'm going to the ALGA National Assembly next week, and I'll be taking Councillor Thorpe's motion from the Huon Valley to that, which, if it's successful, and nothing's going to happen overnight, but if it's successful, it sources some additional funding for not so much the doctors, but the additional medical capacities that work really well around rural and regional medical facilities. So, fingers crossed.
Yep. Thank you. Do I have any? I just, yes, yep, here we go.
I had two. One was very minor. The $40,000 reduction in the chip shop turnover sounds like a rather large reduction. But I don't know, what do we have any idea why it's suddenly being?
I don't have a deep understanding, but we've seen declining volumes through the tip shop, so actual product coming in onto the shelves. And so I think with the deduction, we don't have hard evidence of it, but it has been a pretty significant trend. And I think it's just cost of living, people hanging on to stuff longer. Yep.
All right. The other question was backtracking to the budget, and the second stage of the restructure wasn't included in the budget because which was basically including employing extra staff for new roles, because we didn't want to push the rates too high. I guess the question is, it might be useful for us to know what the compromises are in services, and I'm also interested in sustainable workloads and what the impact is, I guess, on current staffing.
We're going to have to track what that impact is on staffing. They were all well workshopped positions through that restructure discussion. They were deferred to the second year of restructure because they were considered secondary in nature. So yeah, but we'll and now deferred again. So yeah, it will have an impact. So we've got there'll be some impact on frontline administrative type roles. And look, we are thinly resourced across the board. So yeah, it has an impact. It means things will slow down and it can put pressure onto other staff. So yeah, it's something we just need to monitor over the year and keep a watchful eye on through our human resources statistics, as well as just directors managing their teams, looking after their people.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to know?
No, just exactly what you were saying around keeping an eye on those and also looking at our leave and keeping transparency and ongoing discussions with our staff.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any others? No? I just want to make note of in there on the capital works program. It's currently at 131%.
Yes.
Talking about sustainability, you know, you're.
Bring it past. I'll slow down.
No, I mean, look,
Thank you. Yes, I know. Yeah. No, please.
it's a huge effort by that team,
It
but
is,
that's
yes.
not a sustainable level.
No.
And it's a consequence of timing of projects, coming to fruition. But also it's hugely encouraging that the work that Frank and his team have done on better project management and the investment in project managers through the infrastructure adjustments in the restructure round one. That's facilitated that, and that 130% is that catch up. Historically we've been struggling to get 70% of our capital works program done in a year. 130% means we're catching up in a significant way, which is very good news.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Okay. So, Councillor Jessup, do you wish to?
No, Mayor, I have nothing to say apart from let's vote for the motion.
All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's all
I
councillor.
don't know where we were, so I left the room, so I don't know what we were up to.
Silence.
The finance.
Oh, yes, okay, I've read that, so I can still vote, can't I, even though it's here?
Yes, you can. That's, Toby, just do it. Yep, thank you. That's all. Paul, just put it. Yep, thank you. It's everyone. All together with so okay. Now, proposed road close part of Joes Road, Gardens Bay, report number 17.003/25.
Through you, Mayor, just something pointed out, in paragraph B of the recommendation refers to the attachment as shown in red. It should actually be showing past the red line on the location plan. And I think there was a question regarding actual location being Joes Road, Nichols Rivulet. So also change that just to Nichols Rivulet instead of Gardens Bay. Still the same road.
Yeah. All right. I refer the councillors to the recommendations with the amendments that we've just had. So do I have a councillor to move the motion, please? Councillor Rozak and Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Rozak, do you wish to speak to?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think it's a pretty straightforward process. There's nothing that hints at it not being feasible, and it appears that there's been significant consultation undertaken with everybody along the road. So it seems like everybody's on the same page, and let's go ahead and close a bit of road.
Okay. Do I
Question.
Yes.
Just random. What happens to the road after we close it? It's just going to sit there. Will there not be the opportunity for the landholder to take it? Or it's just going to sit there as a public road that's closed?
Through you, Mayor, it won't be a public road.
No.
So it makes it not a public road, so it just becomes part of the private land or just part of the old Crown Road Reservation.
So, I am a bit confused on that same point. So this is an actual road on a road reserve, or is this one of these homemade roads that somebody just knocked up themselves? What's the basis of it?
Through you, Mayor, probably just a bit of a history of how roads became public roads. So before the existence of councils...
You're the only person who can give us this history.
Possibly, I was there around that time. Before councils, there were quite often road authorities. Roads were formed on what had been set aside as road reservations. Other roads were just on private land. They're also run by the name User Road. So over the years, basically the government decided that we need to have some sort of a formed governance and maintenance responsibility for this. So before councils existed, there were various road authorities. When the 1962 Local Government Act came on board, they basically said, all these roads that are in existence, council, they're now yours. So whether they're on a road reservation or a user road, so they're on private land that they go through, they are maintained by the public, they are dedicated to the public.
So is it the land underneath that road beyond that red line, is that owned by council? Or
So
owned by
that is owned by, in this case, the straight line, as I understand, is the private land of the landowner who's got land either side of it. So that will simply go back to his title. The bendy little bit, part of that is formed on the Crown Road Reservation. So that just simply goes back.
So it's not that we're just giving a whole chunk of land to somebody because of
Correct,
the data
correct.
across there, because I was going to try that across
We
my
do
road.
not, we do not own that land. We have responsibility to maintain it as a public road.
That's the point I was getting at. So we're not giving away a chunk of land to somebody, we're giving them back their own chunk of land.
Pretty much.
Okay, that makes
That
perfect
somebody
sense
gave
to me.
council a million years ago.
Okay,
Yes.
when Matt was around.
Yep.
Thank you.
Do you have something else you wanted to say?
Thank you, Mayor.
You don't want to go? Yes.
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
It actually happens quite a bit around the Huon, I've discovered.
Oh,
There's
right.
little roads.
Oh, you wrote, that's fine. Okay.
Mm.
All right, well, if that's the case then, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Management of Hall Committees, report number 17.004/25. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Jessup.
Mayor, I'd like to move a slightly amended motion, well, page and a half amended motion, which I've circulated, and people have had a chance to read, I hope.
Yes.
Is there a
Would
second?
you like
I'd like to
to,
move that motion.
would you like to, I was going to have a second before he reads it, or? Do we?
Councillors have read it, but it would be useful for the public to
To have
that
to listen
read.
to it before we, yep,
I-
that's
I
what I
did-
thought.
I did hand some spare copies
Yeah,
down, but
yeah,
do I need to read it before I get a seconder? Or
Yes.
do-
Yes. Through you, Mayor, in this circumstance, the councillors have it, so you are in a position to move and second it without reading it. However, for reading for the purpose of the public.
Okay, I'll read it. Point A and B are as per the published motion already. Do I have to read them as well? Or do I go through a whole lot, Matt? Or just from C?
Just A, B the same.
Yeah, amen. So C, council applies the following principles for the new hall management approach to encourage and support community groups to activate the halls and build stronger local communities, to recognise the diverse needs of each community, engage with people on the basis of the broad needs of all locations, equitable recognition of diversity within the communities and an open invitation to all community members to participate, to pay attention to the requests of regular and high needs bookers of halls, to keep the costs and use of halls for community benefit to a minimum, and maintain a high level of communication with past committee members and community volunteers during the transition. D, council allocates resources to assist any interested community groups to develop their articles, visions, strategic plans, decide on the preferred type of organisation, e.g. unincorporated or not-for-profit, and complete the necessary establishment processes, including opening a bank account. E, council, through the livability framework, develop criteria and principles observed in item C that define the relationship and engagement approach with all community groups as a specific type of stakeholder. F, council, through our hall management responsibilities, commit to quarterly public reporting of all hall income and expense, bookings and maintenance activities and hall account balances. We commit to joint marketing of all hall activities, joint being with whatever the organiser is, of course. Establishing clear processes for maintaining maintenance reporting to council property services and service level standards for working with community groups and council resources to rectify said maintenance issues, and adopting an annual planning activity with the community to evaluate maintenance and capital needs of each hall and identify internal and external sources to achieve required works. And finally, G, a report on the progress of these matters be provided to council at the October 2025 meeting.
Okay, and we already had councillor Thorpe put his hands up to second that. So do you wish to?
I'll speak to the
Yes.
motion. Thank you, Mayor. I know this has come as a surprise to some community members, but if councillors recall back, we had a briefing in February, and we started this process well over 12 months ago, I would think. And council heard at the review that, and we'd gone out and talked to people, and we had people go out and talk to people, and we found that people want to keep some of the important elements that halls offered while managing a range of risks. Importantly, we were told that there was a mood to support the activation of halls as vibrant community hubs, and secondly, adopt a scalable and approachable approach to supporting the unique character of each hall and local community. And I did make the observation recently to some councillors that the strongest sentiment of halls have been at the most outlying halls. So halls in the middle of large townships are diverse because there's other groups like progress associations or whatever, but where there's nothing else, the halls are a really important centre of focus. Specifically, we wanted, and this is some of the discussions we had, we wanted to foster and keep strong community networks, continued activation, active volunteering and community engagement, local activation initiatives, diverse culture in each hall community, promote vibrant towns, connections, and halls be a place for information and support in emergencies. We were told that consultation found that committees, the existing hall committees, were not wedded to things like the property service, the booking processes, but also didn't feel that council particularly supported them as volunteers, and we've sort of heard some of that feedback. We haven't looked at some of the documents that are there for a long time. There was a strong sense of maintaining the committees in the community building role based around the existing hall committee structures. Specifically, we were told that we wanted to enable hall communities to form their own groups to focus on community activation events and activities in their individual halls supported by community grants and proceeds from bookings. So the obvious question is the pathway that we've started on over the last month going to achieve that or not? We were also cautioned to be flexible in how we implemented that, to make sure we continually consult with the community. So an effective implementation approach will build community trust in council, and I acknowledge, as has the CEO in the earlier conversation, that this has been challenging for some community groups, and there's no doubt about that. And we want to, but as a group of councillors, I generally feel that from that meeting and from discussions, we really do see the value of building resilience and well-being in our communities through a range of groups, such as hall communities and hall committees. And look, I work in a space, Mayor, as a person responsible for a business that employs a lot of people, not many volunteers, but it doesn't really matter now if somebody's paid by you or if somebody volunteers to you, but if you put your imprimatur, your stamp on them, they're basically an employee, and they have every other right of an employee around workers' compensation, around redress, around allegations of bullying or victimisation, and there's also a massive requirement to train them. Now, I think the paper probably over-eggs that a little bit, but I don't deny that by having these formal committees, we're adding 130 volunteers that we have to manage, and we have a poor relationship with them in some way. So if you look at community-based transport, for example, who have lots of volunteers, they meet them every day, they allocate tasks to them, they train them, they come into the meeting room, there's a very, for all intents and purposes, they're wearing little community-based transport vests and they are employees, but they do it for nothing, which is good on Lyndon for having that system. I think there are many groups in our community who operate successfully not as council committees. Council committees, I think, are somewhat anachronistic thing anyway. But you look at the Geeson Progress Association, the Huon Valley, the Agricultural Society that runs a show dear to my heart. You look at there's mobs in Cygnet that run there. You look at the I was just listening on the radio about trying to find people for the camping site for the folk festival. So there's hundreds of community groups, and then you've got all the sporting groups that actively engage in fundraising and maintaining their buildings and so forth. And I understand that it hasn't. I think there's been confusion in halls. I caught up with a previous councillor a couple of days ago who reminded me about the guttering on the Mountain River Hall that fell on her and covered her in water. And I said, oh, well, that was 2 years ago, Jenny, get over it. And she said, it still hasn't been fixed. So, and again, who's responsible for fixing that guttering? Do we want the old duffer to climb up on the roof, as was mentioned, and fall off? No, we don't. But if council's not going to do it, somebody's going to climb on that roof and do it because they love the halls and they want them to be viable and so. So, where we've got to with this motion is to really accept that I think council needs to, I think the term arse was used recently, but it's getting off it rather than trying to protect it. We need to take ownership, and as somebody said, it will cost more money. And it probably should cost more money, but there's also major halls, the Palais is a good example, that we do need to spend a lot of money on because the corner of the Palais is falling down. So somehow the community needs to have a mechanism to hold us to account to do that work rather than letting, and I have seen halls across Tasmania that have been neglected by their councils and fallen down, and I don't think any of us want that either. So what I've tried to do with this amendment, Mayor, is testing the feeling of the room and the councillors around the table, I don't think there was any interest in delaying the motion or not going down this path. I think we've all said we need to go down the path, but what I've tried to do with these amendments to the motion, Mayor, is have a bit more of a staged transition process. I note that the work you guys have done already, going out to see halls. I know I've seen some documents from Ange, who's really takes carriage of this area around fact sheets for helping halls get involved and incorporate those community groups. And I know she's very willing to help to do that. So really this is really trying to identify a series, I suppose, of requirements that council will impose upon staff to do, but also to have a clear reporting process that we come back in October, we get feedback on how it's going. If we have to tweak and adjust or add further, we can do that then. But that's a motion, Mayor, and that's for the consideration of the council.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Jessup is saying. There's just a couple of little things that I think he just used the words we can tweak and adjust later on. I would like to see D removed from this. I don't think at this stage we should be committing to actually allocating resources to help these committees set themselves up in a different form. So for me, I'd like to see D disappear, and whether we need to do quarterly public reporting straight up, I think once a year would be adequate, and both ways avoiding some costs, which could be quite costly by doing quarterly reports.
Yes, you can.
Through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
So just to, as you guys know, I support this motion, and it's in line with what we're developing and doing anyway. So it provides that clear commitment. With regards to your comments, Councillor Burgess, so the resources, that assistance to community groups to do this, we're basically finalising that documentation at the moment, and the next round of our conversations with community groups, this is really central to keeping that the community alive in these spaces. So there's no additional resourcing requirement. This is
just doing now.
This is what it's really at the heart of our livability work. So councillors don't need to have concern with the D is a commitment to further resources. With regards to the reporting requirements, the Space to Go, the new booking system, makes that reporting very efficient and effective. If it was a burden, I would have a problem with it, and I'd say quarterly would be too much. But as it stands, it's really not a significant demand, largely automated out of that booking system, which is one of the advantages of that booking system, that we can keep track of it and then provide transparency on how they're used. So just for councillors' consideration.
And we do a quarterly financial reporting anyway. That's when we sort of update the forecast. So that's a sort of a standard accounting. Sorry, Patty. It's a standard accounting process. It's just one more thing that you have to put to your end of quarter list of shit that you have to do.
I'm sure she's smiling behind me.
I'm pretty happy with that answer.
Yeah.
Those answers.
Oh, just a bit of, I suppose, where I stand. I'm concerned that we risk losing the support of our current hall committees, and I'm concerned without their support and involvement, halls will become unviable and unused. I hope that the amendments that Councillor Gibson has just put forward can build some trust with the current hall committees. Most of these halls were built many decades ago, and when communities just tucked in and got things done, and created a great service to their local communities by just doing things and raising money without sort of too much hindrance from government. For me, it's sad that we're losing that can-do attitude in our communities. But I also understand that risk and OHS concerns demands that we have to change. And I confer with Mr. Wilson. I think that Australia is losing its productivity because we're being hindered by the inability to accept risk. And I don't know how you change that, but I think long term it's going to hurt us financially because we can't do anything. And I think the OHS industry is a self-propelled industry that makes, the more work they make, the richer they become. So I think that's a huge problem for Australia, but obviously can't fix that today. But I just ask, as a council, we don't overreach and don't control the halls, and I ask our current hall committees to stay with us and give us a chance. And I'm sure if there are concerns raised, I'm sure the councillors here would all sort of address those concerns. So, yeah, that's it.
Do you have any other? Yes, Councillor.
As I said, I went to the initial forum and I felt the mood and followed up going to multiple meetings, and I could feel the pain and the fear and the uncertainty and anger from a lot of committee members. And I'm very thankful to the dedicated staff for making a big effort to go and talk to everybody individually. And I noticed through the meeting in every case, there was a change of mood, and once the situation was explained, and I mean, Councillor O'Neill is correct that there are risk WHS issues that we have to deal with. It would be nice if we didn't, but we do. So I'm absolutely convinced that we're going down the right path. I'm also very concerned that this is only stage one, and stage two is going on to work with volunteers and ex-community members and anybody who wants to be involved to increase community use of the halls and to increase community engagement in the areas. And so Councillor O'Neill didn't make a mistake. I actually did write those principles that were incorporated into this amendment because I wanted that to be, behind all of the decisions that we make going forward. So I think that's really all I had to say. I really hope that community members and committee members, ex-committee members, stay involved. I think most people will because we love our communities and we want to be involved, and it's really important to volunteer in communities to make them strong, because that's what makes us strong. So. I think this is only stage 1. Stage 2 will be developing the full process, and it'll be adjusted as we go along. It's not going to be a finished work straight away.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Through you, Mayor, I will try to not talk too much and then I won't get another asthma attack. So Councillor Gibson's just hit the nail completely on the head, and that was the feeling that I also got.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, same. So it initially started off a little frosty, but it sort of got a bit warmer as we went along. And I think the thing to remember with the halls is there's 15 of them. And every single person that's a committee of their hall feels like that's the only hall in the Huon because they've invested so much time, energy, and, it becomes a part of the family, so to speak. Nobody wants to strip that away, but we couldn't actually applaud the work that you've all done more so. But every single hall has a different criteria. Cygnet has no committee. Palais has a committee. Then we have all these small halls. So if we didn't find a system that worked across the board in a format that could be used, tweaked, utilised, but differed slightly, we're probably not going to have any halls because it has to change. We have to get centralised bookings. We have to make sure you're all safe. We have to make sure we're all safe. There's been work done to some of the halls that is highly inappropriate that nobody ever knew about until this all started to come across. So it hasn't been an easy thing, and it's been going for 2 years, and we've talked a lot about this. So as long as you all know, this is not something that we've just gone, we want to whip them out of their halls, we're going to take everything away from, because that's not it at all. It's been a really stressful, long conversation to try and find a system that keeps us involved and you guys where you want to be with every single hall. Now, we're probably not going to be on the Christmas card gift list for a while, but I think it will work because Ange is really proactive with trying to find a system. And the system isn't set in stone. We can change it as we go along, and we don't want you to go away. We want you to work more with us. We want to hear more feedback. We want to hear, more of what perhaps we haven't heard before. And I think that's been part of the problem. So as much as it looks like we're removing your safe zone, what you've worked so hard, we're actually trying to give it to you and help you along the way. I imagine that if there's any of us would probably be quite happy to speak to you about this, as we go as well, to ask questions, couldn't we? There's nothing to hide, there's nothing to be pushing under the rug. I mean, I've answered lots of emails. I'm sorry that I didn't get to whoever's.
That was me.
That was you. I tried to get to them all, but there's been a lot. So I noticed that other people sort of got to some people's, and then I answered some that we sort of shared the load a bit. I also think that perhaps the way the information came across and was delivered was in a way that we understood because we had discussed it for a long time, but perhaps came as a shock to everybody else. And that was the feedback that I had as well. But after having one-on-ones, and we could actually explain that it probably isn't as scary as it sounds, it kind of did not diffuse the angst a little bit, if you like. But I think at the end of the day, it has to happen because if it doesn't, I fear that we won't have halls and I fear that we won't have committees because we just won't be able to afford to keep them, you know, and that's what it comes down to. Well, there's so many extra things that people want in the Huon Valley, and there's so many centralised, you know, wants and needs in every single town. And these are really important because every town has one, and that's what the town was built on. So this is really important that we keep them. But if we don't do something, we probably won't be able to. So I would urge anyone with any questions to just come and have a chat with us at any time, or chat with, you know, Lockie or Sally or Ange. I think we can work through most of the issues, if that makes you feel any better. But it hasn't been a nice conversation to have with anybody, and we've copped a bit of flack, and I get that. But I think it's something that has to happen, and I hope it works well. And if it doesn't, we'll just have to find a solution, you know, where you feel like you're still included, because you are. And, you know, thanks for everything that you've done along the way.
Yes, Councillor Robertson.
For me, the risk assessment document was really powerful and influential in bringing together all of the considerations in this. I'll call it a project, but it's been a fairly long project, and it's the project continues in whatever way, shape, or form we decide tonight. And I note that risk assessment is a hell of a lot more comprehensive than the little coloured chart in our meeting papers. I do think it's reasonable that full risk assessment wasn't made public. We want to maintain respect between all the parties in this. There's no point pointing fingers or thinking about fault. What we've got to do is solve this now that we're aware there are all these risks. Trust is really huge in this. And that there are all these risks affects the trust in the relationship between community and council. I appreciate the CEO's acknowledgement about that history. But the question is, so how do we address that? How do we go ahead and engage better with community to solve those risks? And I note that councillors in this are really key. We are deciding a governance structure for a council asset here. Traditionally, that has been highly engaged through our community committees and those 130 people. And that's just 130 at this point in time. When you consider the number of people who've served on those committees over many, many years, when you consider the number of people that use those halls as direct hirers or as participants in the activities, that's why we got so many emails, so many conversations from people we didn't expect. Yeah, that's how important it is, and the trust is absolutely central to that. There are some issues. I really appreciate the amended motion put forward by Councillor Jessup, which had input from many of us. There are still, in my mind, a couple of issues that aren't fully addressed by that. The caretaker definition, I think, is really important. And there's a statement in the report that council will work that out. My reading is that, a bit of a question maybe, we've got 2 months to figure that out, because at that point we start having AGMs and the caretakers would take over. So that's still a fairly tight time frame to figure that out. We say that we will consult with community, but I think that is really important. This community has the best expertise on what is needed to be a hall caretaker at the moment.
Yeah, can I just, that was a question that you put, and at the meetings that we've had, that has been explained.
Yep.
About that, about the AGMs, and if we get to the AGM and things for that specific hall is not quite finalised, we will work with it to and the group and the community to make sure we get it right. When you say we've got 2 months to the AGMs, yes, but a lot of the work, as you know, is being done behind the scenes with getting that to the process to take to the committees for their AGMs, Amy.
I appreciate that, Mayor.
And they understand, the groups that we've spoken to, the hall committees, have understood that.
It was worth me mentioning that in what I say tonight because it wasn't in the motion. So it was worth me mentioning, I believe.
Okay, yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't, I'm just giving you asked the question, and so I gave you
And you've
an
given me a
answer.
bit more background on that, which is assuring. Thank you. Alongside that, the question is the adequacy of funding to make this happen. If we find ourselves in a few months' time saying, oh, well, actually, D, J, and N didn't happen in the list of tasks, and we just didn't have the staff time or something like that, like that's on us. We've got to provide the oversight of the direction, but we've got to provide the resourcing to make it happen too. We've got to be confident of that. And I think that's potentially challenging, but I am encouraged that we have I think we all see how important it is. We know our staff team are aware of that through this process. I've heard concerns about bureaucracy by shifting the management of halls through to council. I actually think it's interesting because the council appointed hall committees that we had were awfully bureaucratic. And in comparison to our potentially feisty community groups who are directly accountable to the constituents in their own communities, I'm actually quite excited by that idea. Love a feisty community group. So then the last question left in my mind is around the staging of the transition. We're hearing that some committees are fully on board, have come to understand the proposal and come to be accepting or even keen on it. So that's great. But I guess my concern is where engagement hasn't yet, if we have confidence in the proposal, that engagement hasn't fully met the satisfaction of current stakeholders in those halls. Question, and when we started talking about this, we just talked about staging the transition in groups. We've done those couple of central halls, the big ones, but we are aiming to do everything else in this one hit. So I guess that's a question in my mind. Is that a way of better addressing the engagement? I can see the desire of staff to do it in one go.
So that's the primary, we need to develop position descriptions, etc., with those committees that know best what the needs are for those halls and work out geographically how it's going to work. But the other primary piece is the booking system, and the booking system is at this point preloaded already with every single hall. There's some final tweaks, but that's ready to roll, and there are already more halls getting on board on board with that system, and will be in place pre-AGM. So it is effectively a staged rollout in that space.
And I'm encouraged by your comment, Mayor Doyle, about being willing to fully engage with any unresolved issues at the time of that AGM. And that was something I'd thought of in terms of whether a hall committee at AGM could even propose a motion of acceptance or reluctance over the transition being made for them. On balance, and this is a much better motion, so I'm inclined to support the motion. It's given me an element of deja vu, if you just forgive me for a moment. Back in 2001, I was on page 9, you media tart, I was on page 9 of the Weekend Australian back in 2001 as part of the Bendock Hall Committee. I was treasurer, then president. being feisty over some federal government funding which wasn't going to our community hall and was going to a separate community group that was going to do some stuff over that. So I get the heavy involvement in community volunteer committees. That's a particular skill set, and we do not want to lose any experience or passion in that part of our community. But I actually did a bit of a reality check and Googled some other halls from around Australia and how other communities are doing it, and they're facing exactly the same issues, and some of them are solving it this way. So yeah, I'm comfortable to support the motion.
Just adding, non-committee can often get grants that committee of halls can't get, so it could be beneficial that way as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't want to add too much because I do agree with a lot of the remarks made, especially from Councillor Gibson, and I did have questions about the staging process, but I'll resolve that. I just wanted to mention that throughout the process, something I found incredibly difficult was the perception some of our community members had around the way we perceived or considered our volunteers in council halls and how this would change, and just wanted to reiterate that was always of full appreciation and support to the things that these halls and volunteers have made in our communities from the very beginning, and I think council officers have also expressed those opinions throughout the full process as well. So it's never once been a consideration in not appreciating that type of engagement from our volunteers, which is also really hard when you have a big extreme list of risks put against those types of contributions that community members are making to our community. So it was difficult to actually put into perception. And my last comment is that generally my experience here at council is the only engagement we've had with a lot of halls is during the AGM process annually. And supporting Councillor Jessop's motion, I'm very hopeful that this does activate our community halls to be more active, and we do get to participate in a lot of these activities or events or with these groups more often, and not just at that annual AGM basis.
And we are the support network for them, you know, for you all.
Yes.
Just before we vote on it, it's all about risk, and just to prove a point, I was doing a little job for the Geeston Town Hall and I came up short one thumb. So the risks are real. If I did that now, I think I'd been for a pretty good conduct claim, actually. It was all too long ago.
You've got one more.
So the risks are very real. Silly old farts doing things.
Yeah, very real.
Yes.
Just a correction, I should have said Councillor Jessop's motion.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah. But thank both of you.
Yeah.
Success has many parents.
Yeah.
Do we have any other?
No, I think everything that I would have said has been said already. Saving the repetition. I think the only thing that I should say, just chiming in what Councillor Thorpe just said. Volunteers, and I'm a volunteer myself. I and all of us appreciate what volunteers are doing in the Huon Valley. And as Councillor Thorpe said, it was never our intent to dismiss them or to not acknowledge that. It's just the timing where we try to find a different structure for how we, interact with each other and how we make this Huon Valley continue to thrive. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm sorry, Rach, if I didn't return your email. There's, as we say, there's no excuse. Everyone has a reason, possibly why. A lot of people have been sick. There's been a lot of things that have happened in this time frame of this happening. It has been, family issues, whatever it might be. Don't need to put it out there, but there is reasons sometimes why people don't. And some people have jobs 9 to 5 and they're trying to fit this in around that as well. I'm like you, and everyone that sits around this table. I've been members of hall committees in my time. I've stepped back as being mayor on the committees that I have been on, for obvious reasons, I don't want a conflict. I don't want to make that harder for the people that are on there doing a job that I'm on there. So I've stepped aside until I'm no longer mayor. And then I'll go back to doing what I was doing in the community. It's the only reason I stood for council was because I love community, and it's what I was doing prior, and it's what I'll always continue to do. So it was never my intention to hurt anyone. Sleepless nights is something that I can possibly say that I know that you probably have, but to know that I've felt that the community's felt that I've done this for and without good reason, that's hurtful. That makes me not sleep. It makes it hard for my family members to read comments that are made that we're heartless, don't care, that we don't contribute to the community, because my kids know what I have done in the community and still do. So I can rest assure you all that's listening, and to the ones here in the gallery, none of this is ever done. We make decisions because we're doing the right thing for the future. And whatever we vote on here tonight, we're doing it all for the right reasons and from the heart. So I'm sorry that we can't always please everybody, but it's never done to set out to hurt people. So I think that Councillor Jessup, you've had a good, do you need to close? Or?
Give me 30 seconds to close.
30 seconds, yep.
So, Mayor, this motion makes a very, and thank you, Mayor, for your and everybody's contribution to this and to the motion. I don't take full credit for this. Obviously, lots of people have added bits and pieces. So the motion makes a clear statement of our expectation as a councillor group, and I'm fully aware that the staff have been working with us on this and have taken this on board. Our implementation language has evolved, and I really thank the community for badgering me, turned up at a meeting about the environment. I spent an hour and a half talking about halls. Thank you, Jess. And it's passionate and it's great, and it is the Huon Valley. I suppose three things that really come to me out of this. We are moving to a place-based strategy in all our consultation and our listening, and council isn't always a good listener, and I think we are trying to do work, and I mentioned things like the survey, which will have on access for communities, so you can really dwell into your own communities. The continuous feedback and consultation with the community is going to be important, and we've deliberately put an October date to say this is not perfect here and now. This will evolve, and we're going to make sure we monitor it, and you'll all have a chance to feedback for the October meeting and tell us if we've screwed up, and I'm sure you will, and so you should. So you should. And I take that there are undone things like the Franklin foreshore and all, and more work to be done. But I think, we need to have a flexible and adaptable implementation strategy, and I think that's what we've heard. So an effective implementation, I hope, will build back some of the trust that we have lost. And more importantly, I really just hope that and Ange is a great community worker, and I have a lot of respect for Ange. But I hope the process will empower the community to have an even louder voice in how their communities operate and function. So, and I genuinely want to hear feedback from people. So thank you, Mayor, for the chance to move this motion, and I commend it to the council for support.
Thank you. So we Okay, so I'll put that forward. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That's all, councillors, and the motion is carried. Deed Amendment, Signet Township Safety Upgrade Grant, report number 17.005/25. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Yes, Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Rosette, thanks. Yes, Councillor Armstrong, do you?
I'm very excited about this. Can't wait for it to happen. Great, that's all.
Do we have any other comments or?
I think we're being practical moving forward. We're along bypass road, but it's not affordable. So
Still concerned about the pedestrian crossing, but I'm getting over it. Both. Yeah.
Flying over it, yeah. Yes, councillor, did you, no, you're right? No? Yeah?
This is the one we got signed, Mayor? This is the one we're talking about here?
I've signed it and we're, haven't seen a return copy yet, but we're expecting it shouldn't be being held up by caretaker.
Let's get on with it.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really nice when it happens. I think we're due for a bit of a facelift down there.
I think some of the things that Signet have been telling us through their association for some time now.
Yeah,
so
sure.
this is this is a good result, and I just think that as councillors we need to thank the work that was done through the CEO and the director in this position, because of other times we've had to return money. So this,
thank you,
thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, is this going to be? Is this going to impact the period where the folk festival's operating and stuff? Are we going to, in terms of the phasing of the work done, are we going to? Well, can we take that into consideration?
Yeah, sure.
We might have to phase around it.
Yeah.
It's only 4 days.
Yeah, but they have a lot set up.
There's a whole bunch of tendering and all the rest of it. It's, yeah.
This won't get done before then.
Not before this one. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
this is a 3-year program. We expect to finish by 2028.
Oh, Frank,
All right, there you go.
you've got to move it along a bit. I won't be here by then.
Yes.
I won't be a councillor by then, probably.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, there's a lot of work in this. You got to
A lot
remember.
of
I
really
don't care.
came before the
Just
next
push
year.
it along.
Some ribbons to cut before.
I'm joking, Frank. We'll take it when it comes. Thank you very much.
And we know how important community consultation plays in this.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Signet.
Yeah.
Signet, yes.
So, do we have any other comments on this one? Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
No, thank you, Mayor. I'm quite
Happy?
excited that it's
Yep.
all happening.
Well done, thank you. All right, I'll put that forward. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Please raise your hand. Yes, that's all councillors, and the motion is carried. (19.031/25). We're about to move into closed council, so I'd like to thank those left in the gallery, but tonight for attending and for asking those important questions. So thank you, and for those that are watching from home. The recommendation is that the meeting now be closed to the public at
8:32 p.m.
pursuant to Regulation 15 of the Meeting Procedures Regulations to discuss the following matters. Do I have a councillor to move a motion to go into closed? Councillor Rozak, a seconder, I think was Councillor Jessup. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. I advise that in accordance with the Huon Valley Council's audio recording of council meeting policy, recording of the open session of the meeting ceased at
8:33 p.m.